Airplane cabins had a way of revealing people at their worst and their best. Trapped between altitude and impatience, kindness often became optional, and power showed itself in small, dangerous ways. On this evening flight, somewhere above the dark quilt of cities below, a quiet injustice unfolded in row 11. Marion Carter sat between the window and a narrow aisle, her hands folded tightly over a thin purse resting on her lap. She was a black mother in her late 50s, her hair streaked with gray, her posture tired but dignified. She had wrapped herself in a light cardigan, though the cabin air cut through fabric like winter wind. Her shoulders trembled slightly, not from fear, but from cold she had been enduring silently for the last hour. Beside her sat a white-haired man in an expensive coat, relaxed, legs comfortably stretched, already tucked beneath a thick airline-issued blanket. He leaned back, eyes half closed, content and warm. Across the aisle, other passengers slept, scrolled, or whispered softly. The hum of the engines created a lull that masked tension until it surfaced. The flight attendant assigned to the section, Elise Monroe, moved briskly through the aisle. Her uniform was crisp, her smile sharp and selective. She stopped near row 11, checking seatbelts with a practiced glance. Marion looked up, hopeful, gathering the courage she had learned to summon carefully over a lifetime. "Excuse me," Marion said softly. "Could I please have a blanket? It's very cold." Elise didn't answer immediately. She glanced down, eyes scanning Marion's clothes, her posture, the small purse, her lips pressed into a thin line. "We're low on blankets," she replied flatly. Marion nodded. "I understand. I just need one." Elise gestured toward the man beside Marion. "He already has one," she said. "We don't have extras." Marion's eyes flicked toward the blanket folded generously over the man's legs. "I see others have them," she said gently. "Could you check?" Elise's expression hardened. "Ma'am, I already told you no." The word landed sharply. Marion's hands tightened. "I'm really cold," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Elise leaned closer, her tone dropping into something edged and dangerous. "You've already asked," she said. "This is your final warning." Nearby, the man with the blanket opened one eye, glanced at Marion, then looked away, tightening his grip on the warmth he had been freely given. Across the aisle, a young woman removed her headphones. A couple rows back, a phone lifted slightly, camera discreet but ready. Marion swallowed hard. Memories rose without permission. Waiting rooms where she was last called. Stores where she was watched. Offices where her voice was ignored until repeated by someone else. She had taught her children to stay calm, to be polite, to survive spaces that were never built for their comfort. "I'm not causing trouble," Marion said. "I'm just asking for a blanket." Elise straightened, eyes flashing. "And I've told you the answer. Please don't escalate this." The word escalate felt like a threat. Marion fell silent, her lips pressing together as she stared down at her hands. The cabin felt colder now, not just in temperature, but in spirit. A few rows back, a middle-aged man stood up. "That's not right," he said calmly. "There are blankets available. I saw them." Elise spun around. "Sir, return to your seat," another voice joined. "Why does everyone else get one but her?" Murmurs spread. The silence that once protected injustice cracked open. Elise's face flushed. "This is inappropriate," she snapped. "If this continues, security will be notified upon landing." Marion closed her eyes briefly. She felt smaller, exposed, exhausted. She had flown to attend her daughter's graduation, a moment meant to be joyful. Now she just wanted warmth and peace. At the front of the cabin, the head purser, Daniel Reyes, noticed the disturbance and approached. His presence was calm, grounding. "What seems to be the issue?" he asked. Elise spoke quickly. "Passenger is being disruptive and demanding unavailable items." Daniel turned to Marion. "Ma'am?" Marion met his eyes. "I asked for a blanket," she said. "I was told no." Daniel looked around, then toward the storage compartment nearby. He opened it. Inside were neatly stacked blankets. He paused, then removed one and handed it directly to Marion. "I'm sorry," he said sincerely. "You should have been given this immediately." Marion accepted it with trembling hands. The warmth settled over her shoulders like relief she hadn't realized she was holding her breath for. "Thank you," she said quietly. Daniel turned to Elise. "We'll talk after the flight." Elise said nothing, her jaw clenched, eyes fixed forward. As the cabin settled, something lingered. Passengers exchanged looks, some ashamed, some relieved. Marion wrapped herself tightly, the blanket heavier with meaning than fabric. The man beside her shifted uncomfortably. After a moment he cleared his throat. "I didn't realize," he muttered, though no one had accused him. Marion did not respond. The rest of the flight passed in uneasy calm. Marion stared out the window, watching darkness stretch endlessly, thinking of her daughter waiting, of lessons passed down through generations. She knew this moment would become another story, another warning, another reminder. As the plane began its descent, Elise approached once more, her voice lower now. "I didn't mean for it to go that far," she said stiffly. Marion looked up at her. "It always goes that far," she replied calmly. Elise stepped back, shaken. When the wheels touched ground, applause rippled lightly, a habit more than celebration. Passengers gathered belongings. Marion stood slowly, steady despite the long flight. A young woman touched her arm gently. "I'm glad you spoke up," she said. Marion smiled faintly. "I'm glad others did too." As she walked down the aisle, the blanket folded neatly over her arm, Elise watched her go. The uniform no longer felt like armor. Somewhere between the clouds and the runway, something had shifted. Outside, the terminal buzzed with life, unaware of the lesson just learned at 30,000 feet. Marion stepped forward, warmth still around her shoulders, dignity intact. The sky had tested her again, and once more, she had endured. As Marion stepped into the terminal, the warmth of the blankets slowly faded, but the weight of the moment stayed with her. Airports were loud, chaotic places, yet she felt strangely quiet inside. Each step forward felt deliberate, as if she were grounding herself back into the world after floating through something heavier than turbulence. She paused near a wall of windows overlooking the runway. Planes taxied past, massive machines guided by rules, signals, and unseen hands. Marion thought about how order existed so clearly in systems, yet compassion so often depended on chance. A blanket should never have become a symbol, yet tonight it had. Her phone buzzed. A message from her daughter, Renee. "Mom, did you land yet? I'm waiting." Marion typed back slowly, choosing her words carefully. "Just landed. I'm okay. See you soon." She slipped the phone back into her purse. She didn't want her daughter's graduation weekend to begin with, where some battles were hers alone to carry. Behind her, Elise exited the aircraft later than the passengers, her steps slower, her shoulders tense. She replayed the incident over and over, but not the way she had before. Now, the memory had witnesses, faces, voices that had challenged her authority instead of shrinking beneath it. She had told herself she was just enforcing policy, that she was tired, that people always exaggerated. But the image of Daniel opening the compartment, revealing stacks of blankets, burned uncomfortably in her mind. It hadn't been about supply, it had been about choice. Elise passed Marion in the terminal without meaning to. Their eyes met briefly. Marion did not glare. She did not smile. She simply looked at her, fully and plainly, and then looked away. That quiet dismissal unsettled Elise more than anger ever could. Meanwhile, Daniel stood near the gate, filing a report. He had worked in aviation for over 20 years and had learned that conflict rarely announced itself loudly at first. It crept in through tone, through dismissal, through the way some passengers were believed instantly while others had to prove their humanity repeatedly. He typed carefully, not embellishing, not softening. Facts mattered. Patterns mattered more. Back in the terminal, passengers dispersed into their own lives, but some carried the moment with them. The young woman who had removed her headphones earlier replayed the exchange in her mind, realizing how close she had come to staying silent. The middle-aged man who had spoken up felt a quiet pride, mixed with regret for every other time he hadn't. And Marion walked forward, steady. Renee spotted her near baggage claim and rushed forward, wrapping her mother in a tight hug. "You look tired," she said softly. Marion smiled. Long flight. They waited for the luggage together. Renee chatted excitedly about the ceremony, about speeches and photos and plans. Marion listened, nodding, anchoring herself in her daughter's joy. Yet when Renee noticed the folded airline blanket over her arm, her smile faded slightly. "Did they give you that?" she asked. Marian hesitated, then nodded. Invention. Renee studied her mother's face, recognizing the restraint she had grown up watching. "What happened?" Marian exhaled slowly. "I was cold. I asked. I was told no. Others spoke up. I got the blanket." Renee's jaw tightened. "That's not okay." "I know," Marian said gently, "but I'm okay." They collected the suitcase and walked toward the exit. Renee wanted to say more, to challenge, to rage, but she knew her mother well enough to understand that survival sometimes meant choosing peace over confrontation, even when peace came at a cost. That night, as Marian lay in the guest room, she stared at the ceiling long after sleep should have come. Her body was warm, but her mind wandered through old memories. She remembered her own mother teaching her how to dress neatly for travel so no one could accuse her of being unworthy, how to speak politely even when disrespected, how to endure. She wondered, not for the first time, how much energy had been spent simply existing in spaces that questioned her presence. Elsewhere, Elise sat alone in her apartment, uniform discarded, shoes kicked off, the silence louder than any engine. She scrolled to her phone absently, but her thoughts kept circling back. She remembered Marian's voice, calm, controlled, not demanding, and she remembered her own words, sharp and final. "This is your final warning." The phrase echoed uncomfortably. A warning for what? Asking for warmth. Elise closed her eyes. She thought about power, how easily it could slip into cruelty when unchecked. She thought about how many times she had confused authority with entitlement. The realization did not excuse her actions, but it cracked something open. The following week, Daniel attended a review meeting. Complaints had been filed, witness statements submitted. The airline framed it as a service failure, but Daniel pushed back gently, insisting that words mattered, bias mattered, how an employee spoke mattered. The company issued internal reminders, scheduled training, promised improvement. It was not justice, not fully, but it was movement. And sometimes, movement was how change began. Marian attended Renee's graduation wearing a proud smile and a carefully pressed outfit. She clapped loudly, tears shining as her daughter crossed the stage. In that moment, the flight felt distant, smaller, unable to overshadow the joy she felt watching her child succeed in a world that had not always been kind. Later, as they took photos, Renee squeezed her hand. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" Marian asked. "For showing me how to stand tall," Renee replied. "Even when you shouldn't have to?" Marian smiled, her heart full. Weeks later, on another flight, another passenger would ask for a blanket. The request would be granted without hesitation. No one would notice. No one would applaud. But somewhere in that small, ordinary kindness lived the echo of a moment when silence had been broken. And Marian, back home, would fold away the memory, as she always did, not forgetting, but refusing to let bitterness claim her. She knew who she was. She always had. The sky would keep testing people. Flights would continue. Choices would still be made in aisles and rows and moments that seemed insignificant until they weren't. And somewhere above the clouds, dignity would keep demanding its place, one quiet request at a time.